So, good morning and welcome to episode 4 of Other Stages. My guest today is the very funny Kurt Fitzpatrick. Now, what makes you laugh? Is it a funny story or a funny joke? Do you find humor in the human condition? Or do you just love a good old slip on the banana peel? Be sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel and make sure to like and leave a comment on today's show. Now, for my entire life, I've been told in a variety of ways by almost everyone that I shouldn't pursue music as a profession. And my parents, of course, were absolutely adamant about this. And even some of my music teachers suggested that music as a profession maybe wasn't a great idea. This philosophy is reliant on the idea that there are safe jobs, and therefore one should get a safe job and do their passion only on the side. Well, in 1982 and 1983, respectively, both my parents, first my dad, then my mother, were fired from their safe jobs, and they had their pensions taken away from them. So I really don't believe in that safe job thing. Plus, there are many more ways to earn a living doing creative work than most of us are aware of. And this, of course, is what Other Stages is all about. So, for my first musical selection today, I'm going to play one of my own pieces. This is part of my ambient organ collection. This piece is called Regrets. And what do I mean by that? Well, all of us, I think, have things that we can look back on that maybe we shouldn't have done, maybe we wish we had done differently. And these things can pile up on us if we let them, or we can learn lessons from them. And I really believe that everything, both good and bad, is what makes me who I am today. And this piece is an exploration of the emotions that go with looking at those events and deciding what they really mean. Kurt Fitzpatrick is a writer performer from New Jersey. He co hosts the podcast A Lifetime of Hallmark. He performs frequently at the Sunday Night Improv in New York City. And a few years ago, Kurt wrote and created the indie TV pilot, Campus Martius. The show is based on a live show created by Kurt and his friend Tommy Nugent. Kurt has created several solo shows, including Rebel Without a Niche, The Last Straight Man in Theater, and Cathedral City. Kurt toured the Canadian and U.S. Fringe Festival circuits from 2004 to 2016, and in 2014, Kurt co-created and performed Bromance, again with his friend Tommy Nugent. It played to standing room only crowds. Kurt wrote Best Picture and performed it with Tara Travis, John Patterson, and Rachel Kent. The show was named Patron's Pick in the Winnipeg and Orlando Fringe Festivals, and has sold out in multiple cities. Kurt made a return to the festival circuit at the 2019 Rogue Festival, right here in Fresno, with his new show, Behind Every Great Mariska Hargitay is a Great Kurt Fitzpatrick. A few days ago, I got together with Kurt via video chat. He's a lot of fun to talk to. He has a great sense of humor. So please enjoy my conversation with Kurt Fitzpatrick. Okay, my guest today is Kurt Fitzpatrick, writer-performer. Kurt, how you doing?
I'm well. How are you doing?
I'm doing very good today. Why don't we start with having you tell us a little bit about yourself? Where were you born? Where did you grow up? That kind of thing.
Sure. I was born in Philadelphia, and then I grew up in South Jersey, exit 2 off the Jersey Turnpike. And then I lived in Brooklyn for about 19 years, and I moved back to New Jersey. I've lived in Jersey City for 7 years now. So I spent most of my time, I spent a very good chunk of my life in New Jersey.
Very nice. So when you were growing up, when did you first kind of have an inkling that you wanted to be some kind of a performing artist?
That's something I've always wanted to do. I've always wanted to perform, but I was also kind of shy when I was a kid also.
Mm-hmm.
So I had that was something I was kind of fighting against in a way.
Okay.
But I always wanted, when I was a little kid, I remember like pretending I had my own TV show in my room, which I still do. I still pretend I have my own TV shows. Um,
Well, that's what I'm doing right now. I mean,
well,
you know.
yeah, no, yeah, I have, yeah, I've reached I have realized my dream of continuing to pretend I have my own TV show. Um, so that's good. So yeah, I guess I've always wanted to do that. Like I said, I was very shy. I remember in high school, my freshman year, I wanted to do the school play, but I was too shy. So I wrote on the sign up board. I wrote my name in pencil. I was non-committal, and I didn't audition for it. I was too shy. It took me until my senior year actually. I went and did it then. So
Mhm.
it took me a while.
What
Excuse me.
was?
I had a frog in my throat.
Oh, that's
It's okay.
okay.
That's okay.
So, do you remember what the play was and what role you did?
Oh,
Or
sure. I did Godspell,
okay,
and I don't. What's my role? I played Kurt. You know, Godspell. You kind of play yourself.
right, right.
So I did that, and
Okay.
I was just a goofball in it, and it was a fun time. And I think people, because I was kind of I was such a shy kid. I think people were surprised to see me. Not the people who knew me well, because they knew that I was kind of I like to do like bizarre things, but I think people were surprised to see me in my element,
Okay.
because that was my element, being on stage and performing. Even though I must have been pretty raw back then, but still.
Oh, sure. We all were pretty
uh,
raw back then. I mean, you know.
I don't know. There's some people when they start performing when they're like 4 years old, when they get to that level, they're already
Yeah.
pretty slick. But yeah,
I suppose. I suppose. Yeah.
okay.
Did you study acting in the performing arts in college?
No, I went to film school.
Oh, okay.
I went to school for film and television at Temple University in Philadelphia.
So, what
Yeah.
was your goal in doing film as a course of study?
My goal was to more or less. I, you were talking about being a good business person before we started recording. I don't know if
Oh,
this is
yeah.
in line of being a good business person, but I think my goal was to be an auteur, and so I wanted to be, yeah, I wanted to be a filmmaker. I wanted to write, direct, and act in my own movies. And there was a wave of independent filmmaking happening in the
Hmm.
early '90s when I was in school. There was Kevin Smith made Clerks, and
Right.
Robert Rodriguez allegedly made El Mariachi for 7 grand, and that kind of stuff was all in the air. And so I was in that wave. That was when Quentin Tarantino was first introduced. We had Slacker and all these kind of movies. So I was in the wave of people who were influenced by these people. And I was like, I want to do that, and I still think it would be pretty awesome to do that. But I found, and I did do it when I got out of college. I worked as a production assistant on some feature films and commercials and stuff like that. And then I made a movie. I got some money together. I saved up a bunch of money. I made a feature film when I was
Wow.
24, and it was a great experience. It was one of the best experiences that I've had. But I learned that there are tremendous amount. As hard as that is to make a movie, it is very difficult. But then when I went into like a film market and went into some film festivals, I discovered that there are tons of people that are making indie films like that. There are tons of people that manage to make that happen. And so there'll be like 100 movies like that, and like one will actually
Hmm.
get seen and distributed. And sometimes that one movie will actually get distribution, and then it finally gets released in the theaters, and then nobody sees it. So it's like no movies do well. So, a lot of movies get into like major film festivals, but they still don't go beyond that. So
Yeah.
it's a tough racket there, but
Well, the entertainment game in general is that way. I mean,
yeah.
anything that you get into, even if it's something obscure, there are a lot more people out there doing it than you think.
When I was first performed on stage, so when I was a kid doing my first play on stage, there was a high to it. There was a
Hmm.
certain like achievement
Hmm.
that it was like um it was like a drug, I guess you could say. And
It is.
I think from that point on, I was chasing that high. And you don't always. Yeah, I'm sure you experienced this as well. And then for the rest of, I guess, the rest of my life, you just keep chasing that high, trying to reach it, and then every once in a while you catch it,
Mm-hmm.
and
And you
that is a
can't
beautiful
wait
thing.
till next time.
You have no idea when the next time is going to come, but every once in a while you just have this amazing experience as a performer, as a creative person. So that's a wonderful thing. I don't know if that certainly might not provide someone with stability with their life, but chasing a high. But hey, here I am. I'm having a good time.
So I have to ask, is this movie available somewhere?
My
Because,
movie that I made,
yeah,
it's called it's called Kin.
Ken.
Kin, like next to kin. No, it's
Oh,
not.
Ken.
I haven't even seen it in a while. It was available on Lionsgate Films had some kind of streaming service, but this was a while ago. This is a long time ago
Okay.
now, because I think it was before Netflix had streaming. And so they had it on there for a while, and then they stopped having it on there. So that was the last place it was distributed. So I own it. I have all
Hmm.
the materials, and because I shot it on film, I shot on Super 16 film, so I have
Oh,
all kinds
wow.
of elements.
Hmm.
It's all I have it like over here. A box. The reason I have boxes, I've moved them out of my parents' house and moved it here. So I got piles of that movie that I made like 25 years ago. But I'd like to do. I was thinking about doing like how they did uh, Cobra Kai, from the Karate Kid. I thought of
Hmm.
making a series based on my movie that an obscure movie, and making
Hmm.
a series based on it. I don't know.
Oh, I think you could come up with something fun that way for sure. Yeah, well, when I was, putting my notes together because we were going to talk today, and I noticed an interesting thing, um, and this kind of speaks to a lot of us who are performing artists, and it's another element that most people don't know about. So on your website, you're listed as writer performer. On your IMDb page, you're listed as actor, additional crew, and director. But Bing, the search engine, if I just type in Kurt Fitzpatrick, there's a picture of you and it says businessman.
I've never seen that, but okay. I'll take your word for
That's what I got. But in a way, it is apropos. I mean, for all of us who are in the entertainment game and doing it independently of some big agency or something, we are our own business. And in making a movie, I'm sure you ran right up against that.
it. Yeah, I don't know why it says businessman. That sounds like I'm selling Amway or something. But businessman. Yeah, I mean, guess there is an element to that. I will
Hmm.
say that I noticed before I started doing fringe festivals, I would do a lot of shows, plays, and took like acting classes, all different kinds of things in New York. And very
Hmm.
often I would meet other artists who are a little bit like, I don't want to say flaky, but I just did. They're just like, "Oh, I don't know." I went to yeah. So anyway, that happens sometimes. And then when I started doing the fringe festivals, I never met like flaky performers on the fringe. Everybody kind of had their head on straight
Hmm.
in terms of, like you said, being understanding the business of it, because everybody had to do the work. They had to do the administrative work. They had to write a show. They had to produce a show. So I was very much. I remember being very turned on by the experience of being around other people who were level-headed. Like, I'm more level-headed as
Hmm.
opposed to. I mean, I love the artists who are just like, I want to see. I did a show one time. It was a show where we would. It was a devised theater show. We would all get together, rehearse, and create a show in a week.
Hmm.
And they gave us an assignment the first day where they said, bring in a list of 10 things you'd like to see on stage. So we went around, and I went and said, okay, I could only come up with 5 things. These are very complicated things. Okay, the The first thing is we should have cameras shooting us. We could have a screen. We could see what's going on. Another thing is we could have half us performing. So there were all these like these really practical, complicated things. And then when it got to the other people, first thing I'd like to see is hope. The second thing I'd like to see, licorice. Oh, okay. I want to see an egg. I'd like to see an egg. All right. Geez, I came up with practical stuff. You're talking about seeing hope.
We can examine the existential reality of hope in eggs. You know.
Yeah, there's an audience for that, I guess. Thank God I wasn't putting money to that show.
Yes, but I would have to say that in the work I've seen you take to festivals, that there is definitely an element of the surreal. And so just to give our audience a little introduction to kind of how you think as a performing artist, let's drop in your clip you sent me right here.
It's difficult to say whether or not he is delusional. He did have a hit song back in the 80s, the very early 80s.
Hey guys, I'm Ricky Dougie. I'm staying in the room across the hall from you guys, and I heard you playing some Mosquito Express. Well, here I am, the lead singer of Mosquito Express.
We'll turn it down if you want.
Oh, no, man, play it loud. That must have been the best day of those guys' lives.
Clearly, anyone under the age of 50 never knew who he was. Those who are over 50 don't recognize him anymore. Yet he insists on flaunting his presence. My colleague, Professor Peter Michael Marino, pointed out that it was interesting that he gives a complete introduction to people, like he subconsciously knows that they don't know who he is.
Boo! Hey, skibbity-bobbity-bibbity-bobbity-boo! It's me, Ricky Dougie from Mosquito Express. I bet you want my autograph. Got it right here. She's gonna be talking about that for years.
It's like he exists in the year 1981. He won't allow himself to move on.
Hey, it's me, Ricky Dougie. I was across the hall filming a documentary interview, so I figured I'd come over here and surprise someone.
Yes, we're working on the same documentary, The Delusional Self-Relevance of Ricky Dougie.
No, the one they told me I'm working on is called The Superstar Ricky Dougie. Hey, wait a minute. You mean to tell me there are 2 documentaries being made about Ricky Dougie? I am so freaking famous!
Oh.
So, can you tell me a little bit, what was the inspiration for that little routine, that very fun routine?
Oh, because I'm a big fan of David Lee Roth.
Okay.
that sketch played as part of a Fringe live stream. I was doing sketches for the Fringe live stream show, and that was part of my So, big fan of David Lee Roth, and I found a video online of David Lee Roth staying in a hotel in Vegas, and he heard people across the hall playing Van Halen music. So he goes, he knocks on the door with like a whole camera crew of people. They're all around. He knocks on the door. He's like, "Hey, I'm David Lee Roth. I heard you playing Van Halen." And these guys, they're like in their late 20s, whatever. They're all like, "Okay." They didn't even know. I don't think they knew who he was, and I don't think that David Lee Roth was aware. They didn't know. Maybe he was, but he's like, "I am Van Halen, yeah." And they're like, "Oh, you're Sammy Hagar?" What? They didn't know. They're like, "Oh, okay." And so then David Lee Roth walks out, and walks to the elevator. He's like, "Man, that was great. Oh, man." And one of the guys runs down the hall, and I guess he just like looked up the Wikipedia page and found out who he was. And he goes, "Hey, Dave, sorry about that. We'll turn the music down if you want." "Oh, no. You know, David Lee Roth, like short white hair and He's
They
like
probably
about.
just thought it was some crazy old guy that forgot to take his meds.
He
You
looks
know.
like a character. He does look. He definitely. He's still a character. He had the outfit on. That
hmm
the bright suits. And they knew he was somebody.
One of the other things you're doing is it's a podcast, right? A lifetime of Hallmark, and you and Les were talking about this
We do
months
it.
ago. Last time we saw each other.
Yeah, I do it with Les Kirkendall Barrett and Jason Bowers, and we're doing an episode about every week where we do a comedic dissertation of Hallmark and Lifetime movies. So we have a good time, and we're all pretty well versed in pop culture, so we go on tangents, and we also have a Black China news every week.
Okay.
I supply I have to do I'm like I'm like a Walter Cronkite in a way.
Okay.
I do I don't know. Did he was he an investigative journalist in a way, or was he just an anchor man?
He was just the anchor guy.
Okay. Maybe I'm not. I don't know what
Yeah.
I would be. Uh, but no, I find the Black China news of the week, and I supply that to our audience.
Yeah, Walter was kind of the last of the trusted journalists. I mean, everybody trusted whatever Walter said. He just
Okay.
had that thing about him. But yeah, he was not the gotcha journalism that we're used to today.
Okay. Yeah. Old school.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about some of your other projects, that anything you've got coming up? I think you got a new Rogue show that's going to be in our virtual Rogue
I
coming up.
do. In fact, it's going to be on March 6th and March 14th, and it is Hooray for Speech Therapy 2021, which I came
Okay.
up with. I came up with the title because I had to come up with the title that day.
Yeah.
So Hooray! That's what I'll do. So I did a show. My very first solo show is called Hooray for Speech Therapy. I first did it in New York at a theater called Under St. Mark's in 2003,
Hmm.
a long time ago, and I started doing it on the Fringe like a year later. I did my very first Fringe festival. I did it at the Rogue Festival
Right,
in
and that's where
Fresno.
we met.
Yeah, in
Yep.
2009 was the first year I was
hmm
there. And I did it. I did it again too. I did a little bit of an updated version. But this will be. I will be writing a lot of new stuff for this version because I haven't done the show in about 5 or 6 years.
Okay.
So it's been a while. I think it's been about 6 years. I've done the show about 95 times altogether, all throughout the U.S. and Canada. So.
Would you mind telling us a little bit about how Hooray for Speech Therapy came about? I
Sure.
saw the first version, and I'm looking forward to the new version.
Sure. The show is the first, what is it? The first one-man show about stuttering performed by a stutterer. And that's what it is. I remember the little tagline I used was, get the word out. So that's fun. And so the story was about how I went through speech therapy as a kid, and it didn't have such a great experience. But then in my late 20s, I went through a 3-week intensive speech therapy program in Virginia. It was like a speech therapy boot camp,
Wow.
and where we relearned how to speak, pretty much. So it was that, and it's I talk about in an entertaining fashion. I talk about kind of the mechanics of it, the mechanics of speech, and how it's something that I'm always aware of. But it should be interesting for me to revisit it because I have a whole different experiences, whole different outlook on it.
Mhm.
Yeah, I've noticed in the last maybe less than a year, I've noticed that I have adapted a new way of speaking, and it's like something. And this is an exclusive for your show because I haven't said this out loud to another human being yet. But I've noticed that I have adapted a new way of speaking, which I am a little concerned about, because I might have to kind of stop that before it's too late. But basically, it's like there are certain letters that I'll say like dog, dog,
Hmm.
like that. And you can't really hear the D. It's like
Okay.
my I'm kind of I'm kind of cheating when I say it because there are certain letters that I have trouble saying. So if I
Okay.
say so if I really say the full D, dog, but I just do it very lightly. I just go like dog like that, and you
Okay.
can't really hear it. And I've heard myself because I hear myself on podcasts and like shows like this, and it's not like that letter. The way my speech has like somehow evolved into this.
Hmm.
I can't. Some of my letters aren't really clear, so
So you feel like it's a backslide,
I
really?
think it's just a new. I don't know if it's such a backslide.
Hmm.
I think I don't know when it began. It's got to be pretty recent, but it's like somewhere I discovered a crutch, and
Okay.
I didn't. This isn't something I've like. It's not. I'm not consciously doing this. I can't
Hmm.
remember the path of all this, but I've found a crutch, and the crutch kind of works, and the crutch is now implemented into my speech.
Okay.
But I don't. I feel like I should try to get out of that. For one
I
thing,
see.
is I want to keep acting, and I don't
Yeah.
want. And I feel like with a stuttering, if you kind of hesitate on a word or something like that, that can still work. You know,
Hmm.
all kinds of actors have quirks and things to work around. But I think, but you have to be able to understand what I'm saying, and if there's letters that I'm not saying, that might be a hard thing. I'm not extremely worried about it. I have other things on my mind as well. So
Yeah.
yeah,
But I think I'm glad you're revisiting Hooray for Speech Therapy. That was the first show of yours that I ever saw, and I thought it was really wonderful. The way that you took
thank you.
something that does have some negative cultural implications. A lot of people are, there's those awful stereotypes that are floating around, and then you just kind of flipped that around, made it very funny, made it very real, and very relatable because you are one. So, and that's a marvelous thing when somebody who has an impediment of some kind overcomes it and can share that with the rest of the world. That's a great thing.
Thank
And
you.
you know
Yeah.
what? We have run out of time.
Have we? Okay.
We have run out of time. Oh, my goodness. Thank you so much for being on the show today. And as always, I'll have a list of links so you can find out more about Kurt
Oh,
in the show's description. So thank you so much, Kurt.
thank you for having me. Bye, everybody.
So, as always, there are links to more about Kurt Fitzpatrick in the show's description. I encourage you to go visit those. And I put a link in there also to the Fresno Rogue Festival, which will be online this year. And so anybody anywhere can watch it. And they'll have information as to the showtimes specifically for Kurt and a lot of other great performers that you might want to check out. So, the next piece of music I'd like to play for you today is another one of my own. And this one is called Obsessive Love. Well, what is obsessive love? Well, of course, it could be a bad romance that you maybe need to get out of. It could be an addiction of some kind. It could be an attachment to something or some activity that's just not good in your life. And I know in my own experience, I've had such things where those attachments were unhealthy, but they were hard to get out of. And so this is my kind of musical take on that experience. So, back when I was just 14 years old, like most teenagers, I started thinking about who I was and what I wanted to do. And in 1978, there were many opportunities for professional organist. My basic plan was to work at an organ store, play a couple of nights at a place called Pizza and Pipes, and play at a church on Sundays. The idea of assembling several smaller jobs into one great big job was absolutely terrifying to my parents. They constantly cautioned me about the instability of it all. They could only see my plan through the lens of their own fears. Risk was not in my parents' vocabulary. They wanted me to go to college, get a sensible degree, get a safe job, and retire on a pension. But as I said earlier, both my parents, after following this plan, lost their safe jobs and had their pensions taken from them. And even after losing everything, they still clung to that whole safe job mantra. All that aside, there's really a bigger issue here. It's about what each of us wants out of life. For my parents, it was all about appearances, having the right house, having the right car, being seen at the right events. They believed that having a safe job was the best path to what they thought they wanted. But for Eileen and I, it's about something very different. Long before we even talked about marriage, Eileen and I had many conversations about what we wanted out of life. And it wasn't houses, it wasn't cars, it was experiences, it was time. It was the opportunity and the support to pursue our creativity and see wherever that path took us. The fancy house, the fancy car, and the fancy event, well, if those are your thing, then definitely go for it. Each of us has to find a life that we love and one that brings us satisfaction. Now, my parents never found any satisfaction in life because they never figured out what it was they really wanted. And even if they did, they were too scared to do anything about it. Today we met Kurt Fitzpatrick, who gets great satisfaction out of life by making people laugh, and he does this in a variety of ways. Next week we're going to meet Grant Knudsen, who finds satisfaction in helping other performers get their work out to the public. And on Valentine's Day we will meet a wonderful couple, John and Valerie, who are very passionate about acting, and they have found great satisfaction in community theater. I know lots of musicians, and some are full-time. Some are part-time, and some just have it as a hobby. A creative endeavor can be a full-time career, or it can be a part-time venture, or it can just be for fun. But at the end of the day, finding a way to do what we love isn't really optional. For my entire life, people have tried to convince me to give up on performing and go get one of those safe jobs. And from time to time, I've bought into that idea, got out and got me one of those safe jobs and found nothing but misery. 30 years ago, Eileen and I made a decision to live modestly. And this allows us to put our creative pursuits first. And that brings us great satisfaction. So whatever it is you love most, make it a priority, because you only live once. Now, my final musical selection today, we're going to go back to the music of Johann Sebastian Bach. And I love this piece because it's filled with such joy and optimism. This is from one of his preludes and fugue that is known as the Saint Anne. And I'm going to play just the fugue section. And it's, like I say, one of my most favorite pieces, and I think you'll find that it is filled with joy and optimism. As always, gratuities for today's show can be left at Venmo or PayPal. Those links are in the show description. And you can become a regular supporter of this show and get exclusive videos on Patreon. All those links, as always, in the description. Thank you so much for tuning in today. Next week, my guest will be Grant Knutson, who has carved out a unique niche in the festival circuit. Part promoter, part producer, and part educator. And in 2 weeks, something very special. I will have the first of several interviews with synthesizer pioneer Don Lewis. So we will see you next week.